Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This six-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, what an absolute treat we have today. JT Frank is with us. You probably have seen him all over LinkedIn through the non-for-profit that they do, Consequent of Habit. Incredible organization. Can't wait to hear what started that, where it got. We're going to dive all into it because I'm just going to keep rambling. JT, thank you so much for joining us on the Got Your Six podcast.
Tony Nash, here we are, man. We're doing it. This has been a while in the making, man. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. Someone that has 24 years of public service across the board, doing it all, starting in the Air Force. JT has really lived a lot of different lives, and I think I have to start at the place that is near and dear to both of our hearts. Is from your time in the military, what do you still implement today if you had to pick one thing?
Oh, man. I'd tell you what I have to fall back on because I lost it as soon as I got out. It has to be, I know now that I need structure. Yeah. And the military offered that for me, and without it, I self-destruct. Like I've accepted the fact that I have a personality that doesn't do well if I don't have structure. So that's, I'd say that'd be the biggest thing is acceptance. That I need these rules in place for me. I need structure. I need to be held accountable. I wish I was a little bit different in some ways, but part of this is just accepting the way that you are and then kind of working around that.
How have you found and implemented that structure in your life being outside of an organization like the Air Force or the military? Because that's not easy, right? No.
And I'd say it's the jobs I picked, and this can go back to, so I got out of the Air Force in 2000, and I was living in California, and I thought I had it figured out. I excelled in the military. I got this thing licked because I've got ADHD, and but I'm cured. I'm cured from this my time in the Air Force, and it was an experiment gone awry. I found out very quickly that that is not the case, and I ended up moving back east to the East Coast, and I immediately pretty much got a job as a forest ranger. I was working construction, a couple different things, but
odds and end jobs.
Yeah, just bartending, doing whatever I could, and I ended up getting a job as a forest ranger, and all of a sudden this kind of structure fell back in place, and my life started getting easier, and I started just seeing all right, man, this is just the life I have to live. Yeah. I have to be in these kind of jobs where you have to be someplace. You have to be there on time. And you're going to have to do these things. And for whatever reason, when I'm in that, I do well. I do really well. And it's just
I'm going to say you excel. Like knowing you and our conversations that we've had, you don't just do well, and you're a very humble dude. You excel.
Yeah, I did. I always, even in the military, I did really well in the military. It's certainly the flip side. You see some people that are kind of self-made, and they have these just crazy habits and discipline, and it doesn't matter where they are, what they're doing. And I just found out that wasn't me. But within these confines, within the right environment, then it's perfect for me.
No, and that power of habit building is so central. And did that come from like a book or some sort of like speaker you were part of, or being how obviously trial and error led to understanding the power of habits. But what really drove it home for you that you just kind of sit back and you're like, whoa?
Well, the power of habit for me, where it really sunk in, it was not because I had some great habits and all of a sudden I was excelling. It was the opposite. It was, hey, I've got these bad habits, some of which I picked up in the military, and I compared it to being like murdered with a wiffle ball bat, like these little things happening over and over and over again. And for me, I'm sure we'll get into it, but alcohol played a role in that. Yeah. And I had these ideas, these fundamental ideas of who I am as a person, and that includes as a father and as a provider and all these things. And I saw those things potentially compromised by my bad habits. So I came to this crossroads and I said, hey, I got to change this habit. And I did. I changed this one habit I had, this bad habit, and my life got exponentially better. And I said, man, this habit thing's crazy. Like the truly the power of it, it's massive in everyone. I mean, literally, there's not a thing we do that isn't impacted by the power of habit. And I'm always careful because I don't have it all figured out. Like I don't have this habit thing. I'm not James Clear. I don't have it figured out, but I'm striving for it. And I think that there's power in telling us stories about, from other people about habits and the consequences, good, bad. And so that's really, I think, where my fascination with it came of kind of flying a little too close to the sun and seeing the ramifications and going, hey man, we got to make some changes.
Yeah, seeing that wax melt in your wings is definitely an eye-opening experience for sure.
Yeah.
And habits isn't something like I pick up a habit and it sticks with me, right? You're constantly evolving through building habits. Is there a habit, whether through it's a skill or ability or talent that you're working on right now? Because you're going to have to start again in anew when you start to build and form and even maintain a habit.
Yeah. I'd say the habit that I work on the most is the habit of true self-awareness, of trying to figure out like, hey, what the hell's going on? Because I found that most of our actions, there's a reason behind them. And I'm not talking about like I'm talking about not being along for the ride, like being in control, being mindful of what's going on in your mind, and then understanding like, hey, how this is manifesting itself in my everyday life, in my relationships with coworkers, family, the jackass on the road that just cut me off. Like, where am I in my own head? And then so the under that, the subcategories for me are things like breath work has been a huge part of my journey. I start every day with, it's a bit cliche anymore, but with some Stoic philosophy. And I think that's always a good way because it separates, hey, what you can control and what you can't. I think when people start doing that, it simplifies life quite a bit. So those are the mindfulness, I would say, is the biggest habit that I work on a regular basis, and then there's things like physical fitness and all of these other ones. But as far as my core operating system, I would say that's really what I try to make a daily habit.
And that mindfulness piece, what does that look like? Because I know you work with our friend, Mr. Norris, and what he's doing. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Chris Norris is, first of all, I'm sure he'll listen to this. He's been a huge part of kind of the journey of consequence of habit over the past, 5 months or so, 6 months. And him and I talk a lot of the same language because he comes from the world of recovery too, right? Like, so this guy had some alcohol misuse issues, and then part of his journey of sobriety is just like anyone who's following, maybe starts off with like a 12-step. The whole goal of that is to figure out why we're doing the things that we're doing. Like, what are we escaping from? What's distracting us from being present in the moment? So for him, he's gone through a couple different ways of going about it, but he does a lot of just morning meditations, and then through physical activities. Always, if you want to find the truth on how you're feeling, then a really hard physical activity is a good way to cut out the bullshit, and you can really see where you're at in your headspace. But he's doing some mindfulness and meditation videos for the nonprofit. He's on the website now if you guys want to check him out on there. And we were talking this morning. We're doing a digital fast for February, and we're going to have some meditation, some people can download because it's going to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's needed, right? Because when you're in that storm and chaos is erupting all around you, why you want to go in our initial reaction as leaders and people that constantly try to seek improvement is to go fix that problem. That's just fixing a problem. It's like treating a symptom of the problem because the problem, like you said, is actually inward. Would you say that is that the most like habit or belief that has really changed your life in the greatest sense of it? Or is there something else?
No, I would say that would be it. And I mean, and this is where I always struggle, Tony, just because I want to be clear to everyone that this is happening in real time. This is a work in progress, but to truly be mindful is to understand that I'm reacting this way, and that's been the most profound thing. And going back to a 12-step, that's the whole basis of it. Like that's what you go through these steps. It's an acceptance of step one, and then you start working through these things and getting to the point where you're putting everything out there. You're not holding anything back. And then you once you figure out why you're doing this thing or why you're chasing this dopamine, why you need to distract yourself on a regular basis, why stillness in your mind scares us, then you can start putting the things into place to maybe try and mitigate that.
In order to create the structure, is what you're saying, you have to deconstruct it to build it back up. Man, that is powerful.
Yeah, you gotta know where you're at, man. You gotta have these baselines to, and like I said, I was driving today and I could find myself, some dude cut me off and I could see I was just, instead of braking, I was getting on the gas because I wanted to, I wanted conflict.
Yeah.
Not physical conflict, sure. but just enough to, and that's a clear sign for me, like, hey man, you're not in a great headspace. If I snap at somebody, man, that's got nothing to do with them. That's me. It's again, going back to stoicism. It's not what happens to you. It's how you react to it. And kind of making those connections.
Yeah. And it's a self-awareness while you're going possibly through a zipper merger, right? To know like something's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of issue here that I got to be prepared for every day.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
So as we talked about, right, going back through and that power of building habits, along the way, you're going to try habits like we've already mentioned that aren't good, that are just do such a disservice to us and lead to failure, that end up building resiliency in the long term. All that being said, what failure has led to your greatest success?
Oh, Tony, that's good, man.
Hard-hitting journalism here on the Got Your Six podcast.
Yeah, you're not joking. What failure has led to my biggest success? There's so many different failures. Yeah, I would say that even going back, my biggest failure was not recognizing that I was spending a huge portion of my life numbing myself and distracting myself from some of the biggest things, most important things in my life, right? So I don't live in regret of it now, but my journey has shown me that there was a good portion of my life that I was not in the driver's seat as much as I thought I was. I can portray something. I was always good at communicating. I can always put this thing out there and people could look at me and from the outside go, hey, this guy's got all this shit together. He's good. He's an instructor. He's doing this. He's doing that. But at the end of the day, it's you that have those conversations with yourself at 2 a.m, and you know how you feel about yourself one way or the other. And not recognizing that I wasn't in a good place or for anybody is a dangerous thing, because you're going to chase these things that make you feel good. And I think that's one of the things, especially within the first responder and the veteran community, that's you mentioned, I wrote it down. It's a great word. It's a disservice. And it's dealing with trauma and stress in a certain way that's promoted within these communities that is does not serve them long term, and if anything, it can become a real problem for some of our fellow brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. How did you flip the switch per se? Right, it wasn't an overnight thing, right? Like you said, you're constantly working on it. But what point did you say this is? When did the wax start to melt, and you said, "Uh oh"?
I think I mean, if I'm honest, I knew it had been a problem for a long time for me. I grew up in a family of drinkers, so I knew that this. I was given a blueprint on how to live my life from a young age. But I knew as I got older and I was around other people that didn't live like I did, and we surround ourselves like, hey, if you're super into CrossFit, guess who you're hanging out with? You're hanging out with CrossFitters. If you like working out, but you also like drinking, believe me, you're going to have some drinking buddies along the way. And that was fine for a while, but there wasn't one main thing. It was just a lot of poor decisions, one after another. And this is a story I've told a couple of times where I was in the back of a classroom and I was getting ready to go up front. I was instructing. There was another instructor up front, and he was talking about a subject I knew a lot about, and I knew he was going to call me. He was going to call me, and I was going to go up and I was going to drop knowledge on everybody in this room. And I'm standing in the back.
You got a mic in your back pocket ready to just let that thing go right out of your hand.
I'm ready to pounce. Yeah. And they call me, and I start walking from the back of the classroom to the front, and something happened along that trip. And the walls just kind of came in on me. And I had no idea what was going on. And I started profusely sweating, and I turned around and I went to go talk, and words wouldn't come out of my mouth. And I'm telling you, like, this weird noise was coming on. I don't even know what was going on. I was having a full-blown anxiety attack. Yeah. I was having a panic attack in front of a room of some alpha men and women. And that was, that was the first sign, like, hey, something's not right. Something's not going correctly. My wiring is crossed. And the further I've gotten away from that, I think it is I've come to the realization that the package that I was putting out to everybody, this shiny coin, everyone could see me for what I was at that moment. And because I wasn't living the life I should be living. I wasn't doing some of the things I should be doing. I wasn't holding myself accountable. And that took a while. I mean, change is slow, but that was probably one of the first things that truly let me know, like, you're not healthy. You're not doing this right. And things, work was never an issue, but when you're not healthy, everyone around you will that loves you will know it, because you're not doing the things that you should be doing. So, it was at that point I'm like, all right, that's started one thing, got a little therapy. Next thing I know, I'm like, hey, this drinking thing, I got to do something about this, tackle this. And then you just move on, right? So it's kind of snowball effect from there.
Right. And that's where people really think that, that transition piece is the loneliest, because they have nothing to attach to, because you're leaving one group or activity and transitioning to something that's better, but you're in this gap where you feel like you're by yourself, but you were able to attach it to, loved ones and small incremental habits that allowed you to be like, I got to do this. Well, now I'm here. I should really do this too. And then I should stop drinking. And that's incredibly insightful, because that gets lost in a lot, because you see either the starting point or the end point, and we never really look in the middle where actually all that change occurs.
I was literally, I had a conversation with, do you know who Nick Lavery is?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah. Green Beret lost his leg. He's the only acting Green Beret that is on a prosthetic.
I haven't met him, but now I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, he's just an unbelievably motivating and inspiring individual. And we were having this conversation yesterday. Like, there's another person that we both know, Jeff Harris. He has this saying that I know he got from somewhere else, but these small hinges swing big doors. It's these little things, but continuous progress. And at the end, you've achieved something fairly massive that you never could have expected, but you got to start somewhere. And that's what Nick was saying. Like, even his recovery from the time he woke up into the hospital, the habits that he put in place without even really thinking about it. But, to go from just losing your leg to having to take the tests again to be an active, Green Beret, it's massive. And that journey is a long time, but it starts with day one, man. It starts with those little habits, those little steps along the way.
Right. And you've just, I think you're running the podcast because you've already segued into my next question is, JT Frank, how are you better than yesterday? You've talked a lot about, the merger and making sure you were self-aware, but what specifically, if you had to pick out like one thing or a series of things other than what we've already talked about, makes you better than yesterday?
Well, anyone who's tried to change will get this, that it's not a clear path up. It's a lot of ups and downs. You just hope you have more of those ups. I can say that the biggest change that has made me kind of better is that I've found something for one of the few times or first time in my life that I'm doing that I have a true why for, that has inspired me more than anything else has. And I literally wake up, breathe it, and want to do it all every single day. And I've never had anything like that in my life. And I think this is all part of having an anxiety attack in front of a group of people. I mean, it literally goes back to these things, right? Like these, you've got this, for me, kind of a rock bottom, and everybody's rock bottom will be different. And then one thing leads into another, and for me, it's been, it's finding a purpose that that, like they say, the obstacle's the way, and that's exactly what it has been for me. It's been life-changing.
Right, and that one branch has allowed you to grow COH to what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this was just me getting on a mic and yapping about getting sober. That's literally what it started as, and I didn't think it was ever going to be anything more, and it's grown to beyond something I could have ever imagined.
Absolutely. I mean, go ahead.
I'm talking to Tony Nash.
And I'm talking to JT Frank. Consequence of habit. You have the experiential events. I mean, again, thank you so much for sharing your story here today on the Got Your Six podcast. Without giving it away, because I know this is what you wake up, live, and breathe every day, where can people reach out to you and connect with you, JT?
You can hit, I'd say that the place I would drive everybody first would be to consequenceofhabit.org, to our website. You can find us on all the other major social media, the Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, at Consequence of Habit. I believe that's...
And we're going to make sure everything's linked in the show notes for this episode so they can connect with you at, like you said,
perfect.
All of it, LinkedIn, Instagram. The website will be the first one up there because there's just so many massive resources there. There's literally a tab for resources to understand
right.
and connect with these other awesome, incredible humans that you had on the COH podcast, the events coming up, your merch, all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the goal of this thing is, and what I've realized along the way, that it's much bigger than me. Like this, my changing myself was the first part that had to be done. But I'm part of something bigger than me now, which is very exciting. And my whole goal is at some point, this is way bigger than me. I could go away and Consequence of Habit continues on, forever.
Absolutely. And, you were able to lead yourself first. Now you're being able to lead others through the power of habit and everything else that COH is all about. JT, thank you so much for your time. Again, sharing your story. And of course, thanks for having our six.
All right, Tony. I appreciate you, man.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.